53 degrees under mostly sunny skies here in Las Vegas. No wind to speak of, a far cry from the trying conditions that greeted these teams the last time they were competing back last November at Texas Motor Speedway. We are now returning to Las Vegas Motor Speedway. The first time in IAC history we've had a repeat racetrack. Each of the 6 teams that went through the qualifying process checked all the right boxes to prove that they were ready for this competition, went out and turned laps in time trials. It was the fastest average between 2 10-lap runs, the fast lap from each of the runs, that was ultimately factored in, and it was the Polymove team that came away with the fastest single lap time. Then we got into the quarterfinals. One quarterfinal was scrapped because of the issue for AI Racing Tech, but this was the dramatic moment in the quarterfinal we did see just a few moments ago.
Yeah, it looks like the team from Kais tried to make a pass on the first lap right on the bottom of the track, and the MIT-PITT-RW team just kind of closed the line, as they should have, to run the racing line that they needed, and they had a little bit of contact, but it looks like MIT-PITT-RW will be no problem to continue.
Keist out of South Korea, though, eliminated for causing that collision. So that leaves us with a pair of semifinals and then, of course, the final, which is coming up in a moment. I mentioned the time trial results. These were the 6 teams that had qualified to take part in the competition. This is what it leaves us with here, as mentioned, the brackets. So MIT-PITT-RW at the top of the screen will move on. They will face the top seed Polymove, which reached a top speed in those single-car runs of 180 miles per hour, an average speed of around 165. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to meet the teams of the Autonomous Challenge at CES. Representing Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the University of Pittsburgh, Rochester Institute of Technology, and the University of Waterloo in Canada, car number 8, MIT-PITT-RW. Looking at our matchups here, Rob, in the semifinals. MIT-PITT-RW, what a great story just to make it into the competition here today. They've had some major setbacks throughout the course of the week, and they'll face off against the top seed Polymove.
Yeah, earlier in the week they were on track practicing with Toom. Toom went to go make a pass and actually lost control and speared the side of their car right in the engine bay. And so it was a pretty significant repair to get that engine back together and all the wiring harnesses and everything that are underneath there, just so they could get out and run today.
The extent of the damage included a punctured side pod, broken alternator, damage to the radiator. It split the wiring room in half. Major engine repairs were required as well. Just a remarkable job. 2 days of running lost, and yet they were able to make it to the grid to take part, and we'll see them in the first semifinal here in just a few moments. First speed bracket is going to be 80 miles per hour. If then the attacking car is successful in the overtake, the roles will switch and the defender becomes the attacker. They will then try and make the overtake with the defending car at 80 miles per hour. If both are successful, we move to the next speed bracket, which is 100 miles per hour. It goes from there to 115, to 125, to 135, 145, and from that point on, each increment is an additional 5 miles per hour in maximum speed for the defending car until we have a winner determined. And as mentioned, there could be a case of effectively a tie. There is a rather complicated tie-breaking formula, which we will address if that becomes a necessity. But right now, it's about these 2 cars getting in position. Right now, the signal has been sent to the MIT-PITT-RW car to slow to a halt to allow the Polymove car to get closer, and then they can begin our first semifinal. And it sounds like there could be more to this, actually. The report from the pit lane, Rob, is there is a communication issue from the team in the pit lane to the car, and that is something that needs to be monitored very carefully.
Yeah, without drivers in these cars, you really need to make sure they're always communicating with the tower, we call it, or race control. And if that communication is interrupted for any reason, or or sometimes maybe it just drops a packet here and there, they actually will just shut the cars down and make sure everything is really okay.
The inspection has been completed. Both cars are, in fact, rolling. What we see here is the Polymove car moving into position. The car on the left-hand side of the screen, that is MIT-PITT-RW, MIT, Pittsburgh, Rochester Institute of Technology, and the University of Waterloo in Canada, all collaborating on this car. And you will see them in the defending role first. That car has come to a stop again. Polymove is closing in. You can see that car is certainly able to recognize an obstacle in the road. It moves to the outside, but again, both cars have been stopped, and perhaps that's a sign that the communication issues have returned.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it, but you could see. So one of the things that we'll be watching today is that the trailing car kind of has to start tracking, right? So they want to make sure it's always tracking the car in front of it, and usually about 100 meters out with the perception systems that are on there, they'll pick up the car in front of it. But until then, they don't really know that there's a car there necessarily, because it's just driving. But until those perception systems pick up, and that's one area where the teams have improved significantly as well. They're now able to pick up the cars at a further distance than they were even just a few months ago.
From our telemetry screens, it looks like the black flag has been given to these cars. And the meaning of the flags, if you're a motorsports fan, they have slightly different uses here in the Autonomous Challenge. Black flag simply means return back to the pit lane in a safe manner.
Right, and so it just basically tells the software, hey, it's time to get on a pit road trajectory, so that it will pull into the pits, and then it has a controlled speed that it has to run at, and just trying to make sure that they're safely running there.
Evidently, the issue was with the MIT-PITT-RW vehicle, and it's not something that they were able to rectify. You can see that team has been tasked with heading out onto the racetrack to retrieve their vehicle, and unfortunately, basically by default here, MIT-PITT-RW has been eliminated. They will not move on here in the competition, and that means that Polymove, the reigning champions of the Autonomous Challenge at CES, will once again race for the title coming up in the finals in just a little while.
Yeah, I feel bad for these guys out here. I've had to do that push with them a couple times, and it's a difficult thing to push that back. But yeah, unfortunately, that just this hit them, and we'll see. They looked really, really strong. The hard thing is really get the car to be stable in the steering, because there are delays, and just at the speed that you're going, you have to account for all these delays in the steering system from when you command the steering to when the tire actually builds up the grip, and then when you actually see that it's doing that. It's a really difficult thing, and they were able to really get their car to be very, very stable at high speed, and so from what we could tell, they were going to be super competitive today. It's unfortunate they're having this mechanical issue.
No question. Fourth fastest team in time trials earlier today, averaged right around 141 miles per hour in their first run, a little slower than that in their second, but combined 138.9 miles per hour across those two runs earlier today. And again, this is a team that's overcome so much to be in this position. They had to machine replacement parts for key components of this vehicle. It's just heartbreaking not to see them have a chance to show what they're capable of.
Yeah, definitely. And you get a good view there of what it looks like. These cars have a solid, what they call spool differential in them, and so the rear end, it's really difficult to push them, and so you have to lift the car up off the ground to quick jack there and then push it in. But yeah, I'm sure they'll be disappointed here, but I feel like we're going to see them come back really strong in the future.
Certainly the most improved team from Texas to today, MIT-PITT-RW, but their competition comes to a premature end. Not the way, Shay, I imagined that the Polymove team imagined they would be advancing to the finals, but I'm sure they'll take it any way they can get it. At the MIT-PITT team trying to get that hardware issue sorted so that they can take part in a semifinal against Polymove, and we'll keep monitoring that situation as it develops. But thinking about what the future holds, so exciting to think about these cars racing around Monza.
And get a good view of with the cockpit without the top cover on it. They're just taping the thing down at this point. It seems like the fastest thing to do. But you can see the Luminar LiDARs on there. There's one of them that's kind of where the driver's shoulder would be, and then there's a fisheye camera there, so the vehicles can actually see kind of behind them. They have a field of view behind them. They can see the other cars around, and so you may see in this final round here that these cars are reacting to the car coming up in front of them and trying to sort of game them, if you will.
This is a great inside view, something we don't get to see very much of, a look inside the cockpit. Rob, what are we looking at? You talked about some of the tech that you see, some of the hardware, but what specifically is nestled where the driver would normally sit?
Sure. The first thing to start out with, you can see something that kind of looks like mirrors. That's a Luminar LiDAR. There are 3 of those on the vehicle. There's some electronics around processing that data. We have 6 cameras. There's a radar actually on the side. There's a little carbon fiber plate there. And then you can think about so it takes all of these perception sensors. They fill roughly around 9 Ethernet cables worth of data. It's something around there. They feed into a Cisco switch. It's called. It kind of combines all that data together and pushes it into what we call the AI computer on the vehicle. So that's the computer made by DSpace. Takes in just almost overloaded with information. If you think about it that way, the amount of info that comes in, the teams process that. Their algorithms, crunch through that data. They filter out any kind of noise or anything that came in, and then have to then plan what their path is going to be around that. That's kind of the ACT piece of the C-Think ACT, that's the think part, of that process. There are other computers in there too that are checking to make sure that we're communicating. Everything on board is communicating. It has different processes with how race control will work. So if they ask them to do a black flag or yellow flag, there are some different strategies around that. Then also there's just, if there's an emergency stop for some reason, if the car loses power, they have what they call purple flag, which is basically just lock everything down. But the cockpit is filled with about as much weight as a human driver, to be honest with you, and a couple miles of wire. And, to replace a human, it's a pretty difficult task. And one of the other things that we did on this design was to make sure it was pretty flexible in that a lot of these devices are evolving really quickly. So Luminar has a new LiDAR already, the next generation. It's significantly smaller and actually even higher performance, which is amazing. And so, we designed a system that was easy to adapt those new pieces on there.
And that new LiDAR actually is part of the upgrade package that's coming for when these cars head to Monza, at least for the 2024 competition. Now you can see the bodywork back on the vehicle. It's a good time to remind you there's a lot of effort that goes into prepping these Dallara AV21s for competition. Great sight to see MIT-PITT-RW returning to the pit lane. May yet get to take part in their semifinal. We'll keep tabs on that situation. I think we have a special VIP, though, standing by pit side with our Shea Adam. AI Racing Tech and MIT-PITT-RW are about to square off in what effectively amounts to a third-place match here. That means, then, that Polymove and Tomb do advance to the finals. That will follow this consolation matchup between AI Racing Tech, which had its transmission issues earlier in the day. They believe those have been worked through, so that's great. Excited to get to see them on the track. They then will take on MIT-PITT-RW here momentarily. The MIT-PITT team dealing with some technical issues of their own, hardware related, so we anticipate seeing them roll out to join this car. The consolation match is underway. It is the MIT-PITT-RW team there to the inside, the second car in the shot that's in the attacking role. AI Racing Tech has to pick a line. It needs to stay consistent. There are going to be 2 laps for MIT-PITT-RW to make an overtaking attempt. If they succeed, the roles then will be flipped, and AI Racing Tech then will shift into the attacker role, while MIT-PITT-RW will be the defending car. Here we go, as we see MIT-PITT-RW looking for a spot to the inside, starting to pick up the pace, but not super comfortable trying to make that pass on the front straightaway.
Yeah, it's really hard to do on the front straightaway. There's sort of 2 dog legs in it. You can see they're running through the second one right now, and it's a little bit tough to see kind of what that other car will do.
This is the first of those 2 laps, so the waving green has been given artificially to these cars. So from this point on, MIT-PITT-RW has effectively 1.5 laps to make this pass stick. The lap begins right in the middle of turns 3 and 4, and here we go. It's picking up that pace.
It passed on the inside there. Obviously, the AI Racing Tech vehicle was on the outside. It ran the line it was expected to do. So the MIT-PITT team learned that really and decided that, hey, let's make that pass on the back straightaway. That's the safest place to make it because it's important to just make it onto the next round. And now they're the lead car. It looks like AI Racing Tech is close enough that they'll probably get the waving green flag when they get back over into turn 3 on the next time around.
You see AI Racing Tech now filling the role of the attacker. You talk about the trailing car, the attacking car, learning from its opponent. Tell us what's in these algorithms. What are these cars looking for, and how does that affect their decision making?
Well, you're just trying to read what line is there, right? And then, of course, when you read the line, then you have to figure out, well, where are my open opportunities, and can my car actually handle that? Can I get by them in the time that I have? And one of the other things I'm watching here is that now AI Racing Tech, now they clicked to fourth gear there. I'm a little nervous that they're sitting there in third. No, it looks like they're maybe slowing down a little bit, because if they hit the throttle hard, they actually may lose control. I'd actually probably consider trying to run around here in fourth or maybe even fifth gear, so that way we're less likely to lose traction as they hit it. But it looks like they're maybe going for pass on the outside here. We'll see how they go. They lost a little bit of ground, but that's okay. They have a couple of laps to make the pass happen.
AI Racing Tech runners up at Texas in November. Their best result in an Indy Autonomous Challenge competition to date. MIT-PITT-RW in the role of the defender. That's the white, blue, and red machine. That's out in front. AI Racing Tech representing the University of Hawaii, as well as the University of California, San Diego. Time's starting to run out here. We see the 2 laps on the clock. So actually, this is their first full lap with the waving green. So now this is the first time AI Racing Tech will be allowed to make a passing attempt. There are incentives in the tie-breaking formula to do it on the first of the 2 laps. There are also incentives to make the pass in the corner or on the front straightaway. So we'll see what AI Racing Tech's algorithm ultimately elects to do.
MIT-PITT-RW had 3 lines that they actually get to choose here. They all had to submit them anonymously as they went in. It looks like they're going to make the pass on the outside here. MIT-PITT-RW is pretty nice to him, I think, running kind of on the bottom and left a lot of room wide open, which is actually maybe a really smart strategy here, because you have to survive, right? If you have contact, your car may not be allowed to go on to the next round, so you really do need to maybe stay out of the way, let the car make the pass on you, and then hopefully, beat them at the higher speeds where maybe they can't recover. Although they should move up to 100 miles an hour here, so you can see AI Racing Tech got up to that speed, and MIT-PITT-RW really didn't skip a beat here to keep up with them, so they'll probably start this next round here pretty quickly.
On to the next round, where the target speed jumps from 80 miles per hour to 100 miles per hour. AI Racing Tech will need to hold that speed relatively constantly within a very small margin of error. If they go beyond that margin of error, there could be a disqualification. That is subject to race control's determination, but they're doing a really nice job hovering right there at 101, 102. And now it's up to MIT-PITT-RW to plot the path. They were given the waving green on that last lap. MIT-PITT-RW was deemed to be close enough, so this lap would count if they were able to make that pass.
And they've been passing on the back straightaway pretty much every time I watch them in practice. I'd expect that the car will try to make that pass on the back straightaway. One of the things that I'm almost a little bit concerned about them is they're running really, really low on the track, and at these lower speeds that might be okay, but if they get through into this next round where you start getting closer to that traction limit, you do really want to kind of let the car kind of come out to the wall a little bit more and stay off that bottom line, especially on the front straightaway and the entrance of the corners. And so we'll see if they can make this pass here and we get to higher, can they switch lines and maybe at a higher speed run a different line.
But it's going to have to happen here on the back straightaway. As you can see, just the 1 lap remaining, and that lap begins in the middle of 3 and 4. So the pressure is on for MIT-PITT-RW to be able to make this pass. You can see them on the telemetry picking up the pace up to 130 miles per hour, and in the nick of time, the pass is made. So you could check that box, MIT-PITT-RW. Now it's AI Racing Tech's turn.
Yeah, pretty textbook right on the bottom, and they were able to make that, get the car to rotate into the bottom and ride the bottom line into the corner. So did a great job. The car has a lot of horsepower, so it can easily pick up and make that pass on the back straight. So here you can see them again running the bottom. See if AI Racing Tech, they're again, they have that time to learn this. It looks like their waving green is there. They have 2 laps to do this, try to learn where it is. I would probably not want to make that pass on the front straightaway, even though he does give you more points than a tiebreaker. But it is just so much more risky to do that. We've seen only maybe one team do that consistently out there, and the back straight is definitely the place to do it if you can, especially with MIT-PITT-RW kind of running the bottom. I say being nice right here, even though this is difficult to do. It looks like they're going to pass them right here up on the top.
Just a 12-mile-per-hour speed differential, but it's more than enough to make the pass on the first time of asking. So AI Racing Tech and MIT-PITT-RW successful at the 100-mile-per-hour threshold. So next we move to the next threshold, which is
115 miles an hour, I believe, is what it should be. So it looks like they're up there now. AI Racing Tech is up there. They're all actually running. MIT-PITT-RW is up to around 130 now. They're trying to catch up. So the cars sense that, right? And they really will pull in about 100 meters or so before contact. They start really sensing or tracking the car in front of them. And you may see the MIT-PITT-RW hit the brakes a little bit. Every now and then you see the brakes flashing in the time when you wouldn't expect it. It's really because they're maybe trying to maintain a distance to the car in front of them. And that kind of gives you an indication that they're tracking the other car. They know it's there pretty well.
We've talked about the difficulty of making that pass on the front stretch. Is that just the D-shaped oval nature of this track with the double dog leg that adds some complexity relative to the straight back straightaway?
Yeah, definitely. And it's really, that car in front is kind of sweeping across the track a couple times as they go out, they exit the corner. They go through the first dog leg, they'll be out near the wall, and then they'll kind of come back down and kind of cut the apex. It's almost like two corners, really, the front straightaway. And so they're back and forth across the track. It's kind of hard to gain position on the other driver at that time, whereas in the back straightaway, you're going in a straight line. And so it's significantly easier to find an open spot here. And it looks like they're going to make this pass here on the bottom. Hopefully they make it going on into the turn. Now they're on the bottom of the track, so they're going to have to turn pretty hard going in here. And hopefully that car is stable. It should have enough traction to be able to handle this at 115, and they did. No problem there, which is great. You can see them then kind of come back up the track there. You can see some white lines on the track. Those are kind of the where they do driving schools. It's probably the ideal line at really high speed that you may want to run. And they ran right back into that, no problem.
MIT-PITT-RW successful at 115 miles per hour. AI Racing Tech now taking its turn as the attacking car. It will have 2 laps to make the pass. If it fails, MIT-PITT-RW would take home 3rd place in the second running of the Autonomous Challenge at CES. But AI Racing Tech looking very stout, pulling to the outside and picking up the pace. Ultimately, though, electing not to make the pass on the back straightaway and falling back into line.
Yeah, MIT-PITT-RW actually ran up to around 130 miles an hour there, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. It looked like they maybe went above the target speed, but let's see. Will they give them a couple laps here? Hopefully they'll let them go and give it another try here. I think they probably have a good opportunity to pass them on the back straight. See him taking that low line again with MIT-PITT-RW. That makes me nervous right down on the bottom, because again you have to kind of pull that car down, and it's a little bit harder to rotate. But at these speeds, there's enough downforce in these cars. If the tires are warm, it should be okay. But again, if they get to higher speeds, hopefully they're going to switch to a line that kind of floats out toward the wall.
Doesn't look like the waving green was issued on that previous lap anyway, so no harm, no foul, it would appear, for MIT-PITT-RW. And AI Racing Tech certainly equal to the challenge. Gary Passen's squad able to make the pass around the outside, and we move now to the next threshold, 125 miles per hour.
Yeah, great pass up on the high side, and then they actually kind of left that lane open. You can almost see that they almost didn't look super confident that they were around, and it stayed up there on the high line, which isn't ideal, but they made the pass no problem. And boy, this is great. I mean, both of these teams have really picked up compared to where they were even just a few months ago, so they should be really happy with how their performance today.
Well, certainly comparing apples to apples on this track 1 year ago, I think it's safe to say neither of these teams were at this level at that point, and they're making this look relatively routine.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. You think about it, they're up to 125 miles an hour here and kind of making this look easy, to be honest with you. But this is difficult, and they've spent just thousands and thousands of hours writing these algorithms and refining them and just processing the data and understanding how these vehicles are moving, and how they're working, and it's paid off for them right now.
The green has been given at this next target speed threshold of 125 miles per hour. MIT-PITT-RW, the trailing car, will have 2 laps once again to make that pass. The world's fastest autonomous race cars, valued at over $1 million apiece, completely autonomously duking it out here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
And MIT-PITT-RW generally tries to make the pass on the second lap, but it looks like they're going for it right here on the first one, which is great to see, up to over almost 150 miles an hour. And if I'm right, I believe that may be the fastest their car has ever gone. I think they said they were around 147 or so earlier. So here they are, they're pushing beyond, into territory they've really never done before, which is just great to see in the competition.
Once again, now it's up to AI Racing Tech to answer the challenge. Not sure if the green's been given or not, but that car is looking awfully anxious. No green yet is the word from race control. So coming around, they'll get it in turns 3 and 4. The next sequence coming up in just a few moments, but you can almost sense it these cars perhaps a bit more comfortable with a little more speed.
Yeah, they get a little bit more downforce, and the tires get a little bit warmer too, and so maybe they are a little bit more comfortable as they go, as they warm up and get a little bit further in. But it also gets the risk a little bit higher too. Looks like there's some maybe tape or the wrap flapping around underneath that car. That shouldn't be any issue. But yeah, it's the one thing they have to be careful with is you get to higher speeds is you do need to be less aggressive with the movements of the steering wheel, the braking. I could actually hear kind of a whistle when some of them were backing out in the corners, and that, as you get to higher speeds, may actually cause you to spin out. So, the controllers are definitely sensitive to the speed that they're going, and they become a little bit more gentle, if you will, as you get to higher and higher speed. You can't be as aggressive because the car gets closer to that traction limit. Looks like they're making the pass up on the outside here.
This is the first flying lap for AI Racing Tech and MIT-PITT-RW at this level, and an easy pass made on the entrance to the corner. It does need to consolidate the pass by rule, and it looks like AI Racing Tech, by moving in front and then taking its preferred line once again, has been able to do so. So we up the speed once again.
Should be up to 135 here. It's in 10 mile per hour increments, and MIT-PITT-RW will need to catch up. They are doing that right now. So AI Racing is running around 135. MIT-PITT-RW is about 10 miles an hour faster. So they're closing in. They realize that they're behind the car. May be tracking or may not be tracking the car in front of it, but it knows it needs to catch up. So it's starting to do that right now.
Remarkable thing here is that the target speed for these teams right now is about 10 miles per hour under the maximum speed they have ever achieved up to this point in the competition. That's now the minimum they must maintain.
That's right, and so it's definitely a challenge, and their controllers may not be stable up at this speed. So this is going to be, they're learning really as they go, so the risk level is definitely coming up.
Quickly explain what you mean by controller for the layman at home.
Sure. So we're trying to make sure the steering is stable, right? And there's a whole motors and everything in there are doing that. We want to make sure that the car is stable as it's going, and just as you get to higher and higher speeds, it's certainly possible that the car will just lose control because it's not stable, and so you have to sort of recalibrate. Making the pass on the bottom in the corner. This is actually really daring. Looks like they might back off that pass for now and maybe try again on the back straightaway. And
again, it's up to the algorithm to decide if this is too great a risk to undertake, and evidently for MIT-PITT-RW to pull alongside in the corner, that was not something, at least on the first lap, that the car was comfortable with.
Yeah, it got nervous. Essentially, it saw that the risk was too high, and it slowed down. They slowed down about 120 or so, and then they came back into it. So we'll see if they're going to catch up here.
Well, now they have to. That's the struggle here, because this is the final lap, and it looks like the car is actually off the pace a little bit. It stopped tracking the AI Racing Tech car, which has been able to maintain its target speed. So this could spell trouble here for MIT-PITT-RW. It does not look like they will be successful in making the overtake at 135 miles per hour. So now we reverse the roles, assuming there's not something wrong with the vehicle itself. And then, if AI Racing Tech can successfully complete the pass, they will be the winner of this matchup.
Yeah, I think it's going to be AI Racing Tech. We'll have to see what they do here at the race control. But the MIT-PITT-RW car has stopped, so there's either some sort of issue or they just flat out don't want to continue. So we'll have to see. That could be a team decision or it could be a race control decision.
When you say stop, the engine is off completely, correct, based on what we're seeing on telemetry?
That's correct, yeah. The Hawaii car is still running. Sitting there on the track, probably what they call a red flag, which is basically just stopped because there's some other issue on the track. And so it'll sit there and run, and the race control will advance it. This is really a safety thing that they're trying to do. Want to make sure that everybody's okay. And you don't want to send a track worker out on the track when there's another autonomous vehicle out there. This is pretty normal procedure here. What a great event, though. These two really went after it. Yeah, they did a great job. And if you saw the video earlier where they were showing how they repair the cars and maintain the cars, most of the shots there were of their car because it was completely torn apart. They really went through the entire back section of the car and some of the tub as well, or some of the pieces in the cockpit as well, to make sure that it was ready to go. So it's a remarkable comeback for them. It's great to see that they got out on the track and did a great run, probably their best yet. I'm pretty sure. Hopefully they're happy with that because honestly they've done a great job. I'm sure the students will be a little bit disappointed, but they really shouldn't be in this case. They really just did an outstanding job.